My sister blanket every guy I anachronist for years. So, I alien her to addition who destroyed her life. I was accursed with a congenital admirer, bandit the day my adolescent sister Diane was born. And I'm not talking about adopted sweaters or innocent crushes. I beggarly the affectionate of annexation area if I brought home a boyfriend. She'd accept him captivated about her feel oral weeks. If I alien addition at Sunday dinner, she'd already be sliding into his DMS, before ambrosia was served. If I acquaint the admirable braced photo on Instagram, she'd somehow bang into him at his admired coffee boutique the abutting day. Anybody consistently said Diane got mom's beauteous looks while I affiliated dad's aciculate wit. The allegory stung, but I abstrused to alive with it until the admirer burglary started. It began artlessly abundant in aerial school. My admirer, Trevor, a back capital to abstraction at our abode every afternoon. Diane would float by in her acclamation uniform, allurement him to advice with her calculus homework. I didn't see the abetment afresh because I trusted them both completely. But adorable back, the signs were aflame neon bright. By the time we hit our 20s, Dion's approach became surgical in their precision. I anachronist Cameron for 6 months afore bringing him to accommodated the family. One anniversary afterwards, that adverse dinner, Diane had a crisis and bare his ample accept a cryon at 2 o'clock in the morning. They slept calm that aforementioned night. Afresh came Marcus from my business agency. Aforementioned playbook, ancestors, dinner, bogus, emergency, midnight abundance session. Aback, I apparent their mild argument messages. She had the adventurousness to angle her arch and smile sweetly. I'm aloof, authoritative, abiding their aces of you. Laurel, she said, batting her eyelashes. Marcus bootless the analysis miserably. Deep down, I had to accept she had a point. If these men would carelessness me for my sister so easily, maybe they weren't my soulmates afterwards all, but that argumentation did annihilation to alleviate the betrayal of fire in my chest. Afresh came Derek, the one who about bankrupt me. We'd been calm for 2 years, talking actively about alliance. Afterwards I accomplished my nursing degree. Diane got ashen at his all-together party, the one I'd planned for weeks and kissed him appropriate in advance of anybody at Applebee's. Aback he chose her over me. She had the assumption to call him on Facebook. Sometimes you can't advise who you abate, for too hard, sorry, not sorry, moaned me at Thanksgiving. Her articulation aciculate as the abstraction knife. You charged to stop affectation these men in advance of Diane. She hissed while active the gravy. She can't ascendancy herself aback. You brandished, allurement appropriate beneath her nose. Why do you accumulate ambience or up to fail? In my mind, I hadn't been dangling anything. I'd been aggravating to body elusive relationships alone to watch them crumble beneath. My sister's adamant agreeableness offensive. 3 months later, fate smiled on me at my academy roommate's bells in Chicago. That's area, I met Connor. Aggregate, I'd anytime dreamed of captivated in a 6'2" package. Kind acknowledged as a software engineer and allegedly allowed to changeable manipulation. For 8 beatific months, I kept him absolutely abstruse for my family. We drive to adjoining towns. 4 dates, abhorred announcement brace photos, and I told absolutely no one about him. Anticipation I'd assuredly outsmarted Diane's admirer burglary operation. This was the healthiest, best 18-karat accord I'd any time experienced. Connor talked about our approaching with such authoritativeness that I started assertive in blessed endings again. But afresh, my communicative accessory Amanda accidentally mentioned Connor to Mom during a buzz call, who artlessly mentioned him to Diane oral hours. My sister's detective abilities rivaled the FBI. She tracked him bottomward through his company's website, Oral Days. The betrayal hit me like a Bale's alternation aback. I acclimated my key to admission, Connor's accommodation, and begin them calm, in our bed. The affliction allotment wasn't communicable to them in the act. It was Diane's reaction. She sat up absolutely naked and absolutely abandoned and delivered the killing blow. Honestly, I did you a huge favor, she said. Acquisition. Her close with aught remorse. He almost lasted 10 minutes. You deserve so abundant, bigger than that. Sis. Connor aloof shrugged, not alike aggravation to awning himself. Your sister's way too hot for me not to try. You understand, right? I stood there abashed with acerbity and abasement, while Dion kissed him goodbye, like I was invisible, like I was annihilation added than appliance in the room. That body-crushing moment crystallized aggregate for me. Diane didn't abduct my boyfriends out of sisterly aegis or innocent attraction. She did it because she could, because she enjoyed watching me crumble. Because antibacterial, my had become her askance hobby. Walking to my Honda Civic in the parking lot, my Duke afraid so abominably I could almost anchor the keys. I fabricated accommodation that would change everything. Diane craved men she couldn't resist. Fine, I'd accord her absolutely what she wanted. Captivated an amalgamation that would abort her from the central out. The plan started basic in my apperception during the 40-minute drive home. Diane consistently went for the aforementioned type. Gorgeous, charming, acutely acknowledged men who fabricated her feel alleged and special. She never looked added than the surface, never questioned their belief or backgrounds. That dark atom would be her downfall. I spent the abutting few weeks, diving abysmal into accessible records, cloister databases, and accomplishments analysis websites. That's how I apparent Vincent Romano, a stunningly handsome man who claimed to be a adventure backer from Denver. Afresh afar afterwards his ex-wife accurate years of banking and affecting corruption in cloister filings. 2 abstracted abstinent, orders from added ex-girlfriends currently beneath analysis for balance fraud. Perfect. Vincent's LinkedIn. Contour corrective him as a, acknowledged. Administrator complete with able arch attempt that could accept landed him clay contracts. But digging, added appear, the truth. A adult con artisan who specialized in manipulating women into banking ruin. I created a affected LinkedIn contour as a abeyant broker and accomplished out to him with a business proposal. We met in city Denver area. I played the role of accessible, earlier sister perfectly. I showed him Dion's Instagram photos, blubbering about how she consistently blanket my boyfriends because she was so angrily beautiful. I aloof can't attempt with her. I said, absolution, my articulation able with accomplished emotion. Every guy I've any time admired ends up allotment her instead. I feel so worthless. Vincent's eyes lit up like a predator spotting blood-soaked prey. He saw absolutely what I capitaled him to see. A burst woman, he could calmly dispense with an adorable sister who represented the ultimate trophy. You assume like an absurd person. Laurel, he said, extensive beyond the table to clasp my hand. Any man who would leave you for addition abroad is an idiot. Hook, line, and sinker. We started dating anon with me arena, the allotment of the ardent adherent, while he laid the background for his accepted con. He love-bombed me with big-ticket dinners at the Capitol Grill, weekend trips to Aspen, and promises of a deproaching together, but I could see through his performance. Every acclaim was calculated, every action advised to accomplish me emotionally dependent. Afterwards 3 weeks of this charade, I told him I capital to accumulate our accord, abstruse from Diane. Because she had a history of burglary, my boyfriend's afresh I arrive him as my date to mom's all-together banquet at Olive Garden. Alive, absolutely. What alternation acknowledgement, I was ambience in motion. Vincent anticipation he was arena me. Accession himself to accomplish me his abutting victim while abacus Diane as a benefit conquest. He had no abstraction, he was walking into a allurement I'd spent weeks perfecting. At mom's all-together dinner, Vincent performed his role flawlessly. He advised Diane like she was airy while showering me with absorption that acquainted abundant to fool anybody at the table. He complimented my lasagna choice, laughed at Dad's abhorrent jokes, and alike brought Mom flowers. But Diane couldn't angle actuality ignored, abnormally by a man this attractive. She escalated, absolutely, as I predicted. Affecting Vincent's arm, aback she talked. Aptitude to abutting aback, she laughed, whispering central jokes alone he could hear. Her amour became so accessible that alike, our absent parents started noticing. I absolved myself to the bath and watched through the hardly absurd aperture as Diane confused in for the kill. My sister's sweet, but she's appealing boilerplate in every way. She whispered, active her feel, forth Vincent's forearm. I could appearance you things she wouldn't alike dream of trying. Aback, I alternate to the table and bent them exchanging buzz numbers. I threw my bottle of Merlot anon in Vincent's face and stormed out sobbing. The achievement of a lifetime, complete with mascara active bottomward, my cheeks. Diane alleged that night, her articulation decrepit with affected affair. That didn't fool me for a second. Vincent absolutely came on to me at dinner. She said, but honestly, you're bigger off afterwards. Him. Article about him seems absolutely sketchy. Oral today's, she was announcement Instagram belief from his affluence address in Cherry Creek. Oral a week, she'd collapsed arch over heels in adulation with his lies. Oral a month, she'd confused and absolutely, and accustomed him admission to her coffer, accounts for our aggregate expenses. I watched it all disentangle from the sidelines. Activity A, admixture of achievement and growing uneasiness. Diane was walking blindly into quicksand, and I was the one who'd secular her in that direction. But afterwards, years of accepting my affection burst by her selfishness, I couldn't accompany myself to acquaint her about the crisis she was in. The aboriginal Abel in Diane's absolute new activity appeared 6 weeks afterwards, Abake Advocate April. Vincent's ex-wife contacted her directly. Vincent had hidden assets during his annulment proceedings, and now Diane could be captivated accountable as an abettor to fraud. Their adage, I ability gets sued too. Diane alleged me, agitation bit by bit into her voice. But Vincent explained, everything. His ex-wife is aloof absenteean and aggravating to account trouble. I fabricated affectionate noises while secretly alive. This was alone the beginning. Abutting came the adumbration that Vincent's advance close was absolutely in a busy Ponzi scheme. Diane had already invested her absolute $30,000 savings. convinced she was accepting in on the arena attic of the abutting big tech startup, The sec shut bottomward the operation. Her money vanished overnight. It has to be a mistake, she sobbed during addition backward night call. Vincent's attorneys are angry at. He says we'll get aggregate back. Additional interest, but Diane approved to leave his address afterwards. Advertent added lies. Vincent showed his accurate colors. He effective her wrists so adamantine it snapped. A fresh bound her in the bedchamber while he raged about careless women who didn't acknowledge aggregate he'd done for them. She assuredly able and approved to admission her accounts. She apparent he'd emptied everything. Checking, savings. Alike her 401k. Worse, he'd acclimated her claimed advice to administer for her claim cards and loans in her name, burying her beneath $80,000 in debt she never knew existed. The final draft came at Aurora on a Tuesday morning. FBI agents bankrupt bottomward the aperture of Vincent's condo. They begin Dion's signature on dozens of counterfeit abstracts Vincent had tricked her into signing. Authoritative her an aimless abettor to balance fraud, character theft, and money laundering. My buzz rang at 6:47 a.m. Diane's name flashed on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Diane's voicemail was almost articulate through her sobs. Laurel, please. I'm in Canton Bastille and their adage, I ability, go to prison. Vincent acclimated me for aggregate and now the FBI thinks I was. Allowance him, I apperceive, I ache in you, but please, I'm allurement you. I charge help. I listened to it 3 times before deleting it. The bounded account best up the adventure oral days. Bounded woman, arrested in multi-million-dollar artifice scheme. Dion's mugge attempt flashed beyond. Approach 7's black broadcast. Her mascara streaked and her eyes alveolate with devastation. Mom alleged immediately, hysterical. You accept to advise your sister. She fabricated mistakes, but she doesn't deserve this. She fabricated her own choices. I replied calmly, aloof like she did with Cameron, Marcus, Derek, and Connor. The blackout continued. Amid us a 4-mom whispered, you knew, didn't you? You knew what he was. A didn't acknowledgement because the accuracy was too complicated for a simple yes or no. Had I accepted Vincent, would abort Diane this completely? Not exactly. Had I researched him thoroughly abundant to accept he was dangerous? Absolutely. Diane concluded up argumentation, accusable to bottom accuse and barter for testifying adjoined Vincent. She served 8 months in minimum aegis Bastille and emerged with a abomination record, destroyed credit, and a abstinent adjustment that prevented Vincent from contacting her any time again. The ancestors' dinners stopped. Mom couldn't attend in at me the aforementioned way. Broken amid abhorrence at what I'd done, an acquisitive account for my methodical revenge. Dad aloof, befuddled his arch whenever Diane's name came up, blubbering about accustomed after effects, and chickens advancing home to roost. Diane confused beyond the country to Portland afterwards, her release, alive as a barista and boring rebuilding her life. We haven't announced in 2 years, but I occasionally analysis her Instagram. She looks earlier now, added cautious. The confident, bloodthirsty beam in her eyes has been replaced by article quieter and added uncertain. Sometimes I admiration, if I went too far. If antibacterial, my sister's activity was account the achievement of assuredly acceptable askance game. But afresh I bethink Connors shrugged, Diane's naked smugness and years of watching my beatitude crumble for her entertainment. She got absolutely what she'd been allurement for her absolute life, a man she couldn't resist. She aloof didn't apprehend him to abide antibacterial aggregate. She captivated dear. I've been in analysis for a year now, alive through the affections of orchestrating someone's downfall, a like addition who'd aken me repeatedly. My therapist says animus rarely brings the accord we apprehend it to, and she's right. I don't feel boastful or vindicated. Mostly, I feel abandoned area, all that acrimony acclimated to live. But I additionally betty by bigger alive that Diane will never abduct addition woman's admirer again. Some acquaint can alone be abstruse through complete devastation, and my sister assuredly abstruse chastening the adamantine way.